Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Concert 7. This concert will feature pianist Keith Kirchoff. Before we get started, I just want to put a little bug in your ear that there will be a social hour after Concert 8. And so we'll have more information about that later, but hope everyone plans to stick around. And so we'll have this concert with Keith, and then we'll have another fixed media concert, and then there will be a social hour on another platform. So I hope that everyone's able to join us for that. A pianist, composer, conductor, producer, and teacher, Keith Kirchoff has been described as, quote, a virtuosic tour de force, unquote. Keith champions new music, especially music written by underrecognized and underrepresented composers. Keith has played throughout the United States, Italy, New Zealand, Australia, England, Canada, Belgium, Mexico, China, and the Netherlands. He performed the Boston premiere of Charles Ives' Emerson Concerto and the world premiere of Matthew McConnell's Concerto for Toy Piano. He has been the featured soloist at numerous music festivals, including Seamus, Electronic Music Midwest, the Oregon Festival of American Music, and ICMC, among many, many others. Keith has commissioned dozens of compositions and premiered well over 100 new works. Along with composer who's with us today, Christopher Biggs, Keith founded the Splice Institute at Western Michigan University, and he regularly tours and performs with the Splice Ensemble, which has recently been recognized with awards from Chamber Music America, the Fromm Foundation, and the Barlow Foundation. As an aside, Keith is also an avid homebrewer and has published several articles on Zimmergy, and he currently co-hosts a homebrewing podcast called Original Gravity. So, Keith, welcome. Are you there?
How about now?
There, we hear you.
Oh, right, perfect. Sorry, I've got two setups, one so I can listen well, and then one that I can talk into.
I saw two pictures of you leaning against a wall, and I wondered if that's what was possibly happening. So
sometimes one Keith just isn't enough.
Right, I heard that. So.
No, I just wanted to say thanks for having me, and for all of you who are organizing this. Also want to give a huge shout out, congratulations to all of the students of the previous concert. As I was listening to it, I was reminded of my first piece of electroacoustic music when I was a sophomore in Jeff Stollett's class, and it was garbage. So this was better than everything that I wrote. So really, congratulations to all of you. I was asked just to give kind of a short introduction to tonight's show. So it features 4 pieces, 3 of which were selected from the call for scores that the Turnip Festival did. And, really, I kind of just picked pieces that stood out that I really, felt drawn to and that I thought would be a lot of fun to play. And yet at the end of it, they all ended up having kind of an interesting synergy, similarity. They end up working together in ways that I wasn't quite expecting out of the gate. And so in particular, all of them play with the timbre of the piano in an interesting way. So the piece opens with Orlando Garcia's A Gamelan in the Distance. And in the piece, I'm muting strings throughout and playing with different harmonics and pitsing strings. Though there is some playing on the keyboard, most of that playing is manipulated inside the piano in some way. The next piece by Yunfei Li, Wind and Sand, is a 2-movement piece, and the piece also opens with me muting strings on the inside. And I found a nice parallel between those 2 pieces, although the sounds, the aesthetic of the pieces couldn't be really any more different. They still have, they borrow from that same unique timbre of muted piano strings. Dong Zhao's Anthos is 3rd, and that piece is actually, I don't play inside the piano, but she has this, it's a very still piece, and she has this wonderful electronic track that sort of, without actually manipulating the acoustic piano sound at all, plays with some microtones that sort of create some interesting piano beating, and it without, it very unobtrusively impacts that timbre of the piano. And then the last piece, which is a piece I selected by Ollie Wilson. It's an untitled piece, generally just called Piece for Piano and Tape, from 1969. This has an electronic component, but he also asks me to put protractors and a ruler on the piano strings, which gives a distorted sound. And what really strikes me about that is without using electronics to distort the piano sound, he manages to create a sort of electronic distortion from that anyhow. So it really ends up blending well with all of these other pieces. So I think that's about it, and I think we should give it a listen.
All right. Wow. I just got to say, Keith, I've seen you perform a number of times, and you just never cease to just completely wow me. Your performance is really inspiring. Thanks so much. And
Thank you.
thank you, composers, for contributing. This is really a phenomenal concert. So I want to just start off a little bit of a conversation here, but I want to invite everyone, if you have questions or you'd like to contribute, feel free to chime in. If you feel more comfortable using the chat feature, feel free to do that as well. Or you can use the raise hand in the reactions comment. But before I begin, how about everybody just sort of unmute and give some well-deserved applause to the composers and the performer of that concert. Amazing.
Bravo!
Bravo.
Okay, so I heard Kay yell bravo. She's getting a little punchy here at Concert 7, so we'll be warned. Listen, Keith, could you just talk a little bit, kind of a similar question I had for Scott Deal earlier this afternoon. You received a number of submissions through New Music Engine. What was kind of going through your mind as you were thinking about creating a program for this event? It did seem to be have a sort of a very natural arch to it, and a lot of connective things that were happening.
Yeah, honestly, that connectivity was sort of a byproduct, like it just sort of happened, which is kind of unusual, I think. I was just, there really were, I don't know how this was for everybody else, but there were really an enormous number of awesome submissions. I was really struck with just how many were really fantastic. And I wasn't able to program everything that I really wanted to. But these three pieces just kind of had, they all looked like they would be fun to play. And they looked like, pieces I would want to play again, pieces that just had something extra that sort of grabbed me in them. And also it was nice to have an opportunity to play some, I tend to do a lot of stuff with electronics, and it was nice to play some things without electronics. So I was kind of specifically looking also for some pieces that I could, that would fit, knowing that I wanted to do the Wilson piece that might sort of fit despite having no electronics with them.
Now, had you played Ollie Wilson's piece before?
No, this is my first public performance of it. I've given a couple rough performances, and it's just a piece I've been really excited to play for a while. It somehow had remained off of my radar until about a year ago, kind of earlier in the pandemic, when I was just doing some listening and came across the piece and was really struck with it. A few things really grabbed me with it. To me, although, it definitely sounds like it's of its time, but there is still a timeless nature to it that I feel like the piece really works now. It doesn't, the electronics sound of 69, but it doesn't sound old. I don't know if that makes any sense. Kind of the way that, Stockhausen Contacta, it will always sound like it's from the 50s, but I can hear it and listen to it a million times and it still sounds current. And it struck me too, when I was listening to the piece, how, we play as pianists, we have the Davidovsky synchronisms that we play a lot. If there's one piece in the EA repertoire that is standard, it's that. And I hear that all the time. And listening to this piece, I was like, this holds just as much like weight as the Davidovsky. It's older than Davidovsky. Why doesn't this one get played? And I set about trying to find the score. A huge thanks to Tom Lopez at Oberlin for hooking me up with the score and the electronic parts. And I'm super excited to share the piece tonight and just kind of make it part of my repertoire going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't know this piece was written in 1969 until I looked at the program notes, because I think the electronics parts sound, fresher than that to me, anyway. And just musically, that the piano writing in that work is incredible, and that sort of constant motion forward, moving things happening, pushing the piece is really somewhat timeless. So great work to end your concert on. Hey, I want to bring Orlando Garcia in the conversation and ask him about his piece. It's so hard to believe for me, and this is maybe a little bit related to Dong Zhou's work, but it's just so hard for me to believe that Lou Harrison suddenly left us nearly 20 years ago. I don't know about you, but it seems like yesterday to me. And I think that we all know about Harrison's embrace of non-Western ensembles and his study and incorporation of Javanese gamelan in his music in particular. But Orlando, can you talk a little bit about your connection to Lou Harrison and him as an inspiration for this work?
Well, I actually had the, well, first of all, before I say anything else, let me thank you and Kai and the rest of the festival organizers for this great, I mean, I've been here since 1 o'clock. So that's a testament to keep me from in the same place for this many hours listening to these concerts. Is shows you how well done this has been. There's been fascinating performances and some very interesting music. So in fact, the only thing that I went away from was for like about 2 minutes when my Zoom went down during the student pieces, which I got back on anyway, so I caught most of them. But I've been here all day. So first of all, thank you very much for that. And Keith is awesome. Keith is an incredible pianist. I mean, he just and we talked about the piece a little bit and what have you. And I mean, he just completely nailed the piece.
Thank you.
So let me start with that. So then Lou, I met Lou back in the late 80s. There was a big festival here in Miami called, it was a festival that went to different cities called New Music America. And it happened to take place here in the late 80s. And we had music on the same program with the New World Symphony. So I had a piece on for soprano voice and orchestra that Joan LaBarbera sang. And he had one of his, big symphonic works with tack piano and so we met and we got to we just got to meet and started hanging around and every time he would come into town for anything, because they would invite him, some of the universities would invite him. We invited him at FIU and the University of Miami invited him. When he would come in, we would catch up and hang out. And so just a really interesting and lovely man, just the sweetest guy. And so basically what happened with this piece was that Sarah Cahill was starting a project where she was soliciting, commissioning pieces in memory of Lou Harrison, somehow to honor him. And so so she asked me and I said, of course I would. She knew that I hadn't known Lou, and I said, yeah, it would be it'd be an honor and a privilege to do that. So as I approached the piece, what I said to myself obviously was, how can I somehow reference the gamelan, which was something he really loved and wrote for quite a bit. So I decided to try to do some things as far as some of the techniques of muting strings. It gives you that kind of percussive metallic sound. Some of the harmonics that are inside the piano, they have to go up like to the 7th partial in this piece, and because it kind of mimics the out of tuneness of the gamelan, out of tuneness meaning out of tune with our Western equal temperament system. So there was ways to incorporate that, and so the techniques were there kind of like to just kind of give a very general reference to the gamelan. And as it turns out, I used some of the pitches from a piece of his for violin and gamelan. That I thought was a very striking, beautiful piece. So the melodic line, which is again restricted number of pitches, because again it's kind of a quasi gamelan reference, that became kind of part of the pitch world. I mean, that you don't really need to know that, but it became part of the pitch world as part of the inspiration for the piece. But otherwise, it's like my music. It unfolds slowly. Most everybody knows I was one of Feldman's students, so the music is kind of static and somewhat restricted, and that piece is not necessarily any much different than that.
Yeah, I think it was very effective in the the use of the piano and the techniques inside. And one of the things when I think of Lou Harrison's music, I do think of his use of just intonation. And so to try to do that with an equal tempered instrument is really a challenge. And I think you pulled it off really great, Orlando. So it was a wonderful piece to listen to. Thanks so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Yunfei, I think I saw you made a couple of comments in the chat, and I just want to say how much I enjoyed your piece. With all of the recent news out of Xinjiang, perhaps your work holds a little bit deeper meaning today, especially maybe that second section. But I don't want to get too political. I just thought maybe perhaps you could talk a little bit about the 2 paintings that inspired your work.
Yeah, actually, this piece originally wrote for my roommate. She is from Xinjiang, and This piece is for her DMA recital, and I got inspiration from her. I said, why I don't write a piece for like inspired by Xinjiang some elements. So yes, I'm using some like Chinese music elements in this piece. So the page collection was from Xinjiang traditional music called Mukam music. So I would say it sounds very like mid-Asia style. And also, actually, when I wrote this piece, I didn't intentionally combine the Western compositional techniques with the Chinese music, but I always like to explore the new sound for an instrument. So in this piece, I'm trying to find a way to make the percussion sound for the piano, and because the percussion sound play a very important role in the Mukam music. And so I'm trying to imitate the drum sound and also click sound of the Mukam music for my piano piece. So which you could hear in the beginning and the ending. And then I used the page collection to build and construct the rest part of the piece. And for that painting, the first movement is really described about the man's life in Xinjiang, and the second movement, the painting describes the woman's life in Xinjiang. In China, we usually call the most beautiful woman from Xinjiang because they have big eyes and high nose. So in that painting, the both painting express very optimistic emotion, like people living there, they are feel very happy, and so that I want to describe that kind of emotion. Yeah.
Yeah, personally, maybe somebody else wants to chime in here, but for me, I thought that the two separated sections really complemented each other very well, and a lot of meaning in the second section, or that's what I got from it. So thank you so much. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to just unmute and add to the conversation, or you can use the chat window, or you can find the raise hand option in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Dongzhou, I wanted to also chat about your piece. I think any of us that are over the age of 50 can relate to not being able to recreate a memory sometimes. And perhaps, especially here in COVID, last year seems like 30 years ago. But I noticed in your score that the live electronics part, it says that the live electronics part was optional. Was that used? Did we hear the live electronics part this evening, or was that all, and this may be also a question for Keith, or was that just the fixed media part?
Oh, today we are only hearing the fixed media part.
Well, it was just lovely. I really liked the use of the simplicity of those, I think you called it linear tones, that sort of unfold over the course of the entire piece. Keith, can you talk a little bit about preparing a piece like that with from a performer's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's really very, as you heard, it's very sparse. And so a lot of it is trying to find kind of a centering, a stillness, honestly, to just sort of hear the sounds, let the sounds wash over my playing, and just really be in the moment. I did, since I was playing with a fixed track for a part of it, I did kind of keep a click track kind of quietly in the background in my ear, just so, there's certain things that I think are nice, the way she wrote them, that if you can line them up just right. But still, it was kind of quiet in the background to allow a sort of freedom, free playing with it. And really just trying to, quiet myself as I just listened to everything. I think it's beautiful sounds. I love how they weave kind of in and out. It's so simple in the best possible way. I love it. I really love it.
Well, Dongzhou, can you talk a little bit about this experience as a composer, especially in a piece like yours that requires quite a bit of restraint, I think, perhaps, from the listener and the audience and the performer, and space really contributes to that. How is this experience as a composer listening to this piece through this medium as opposed to, say, listening to it in a live concert hall?
Oh, well, I guess it's it maybe needs a little bit like patience and space, but it's not too different with from other pieces, and it was originally composed for like really bad piano, straight up piano in a gallery. Yeah, so I think the general atmosphere is more important than like how the sound quality is.
I gotta say, you've just changed that piece for me. I would never have, I couldn't have imagined it being played on a lesser of a piano. So thank you so much. That's really great. Well, unless there's any more, if there's any questions, we're gonna stop here for, we'll take, let's start at 7:15 Central Time, which is 8:15 Eastern Time, for our last concert. It's supposed to start at 8:10, but we're going to begin it at 8:15. Kay, what is that Tucson time?
5:15.
5:15. So we'll see everybody back here in about, it looks like 7 minutes. Okay.